Hey gang, it's Squill, and Ricardio the Heart Guy is one of the most interesting episodes from the first season of Adventure Time. We are only 7 episodes in, and yet it's the first episode to really challenge Finn's view on good versus evil, as well as the first to acknowledge his crush on PB. And while Finn ends up being correct about Ricardio, he ends the episode a little more sympathetic towards the Ice King. But I like that this isn't a simple, the bad guy was actually good type of story. We're still very early on into the show, so it's more like the first little baby step into getting Finn to the point where he is all those years later. I really love how Finn's jealousy is portrayed here. This pubescent kid trying to navigate these new awkward emotions. It's so relatably cringy, I love it. But the real star of the show here is Ricardio himself. Ricardio is such a great villain. I totally get why they brought this guy back in season 4. He's excellent in both his appearances. What really makes this character work is George Takei's performance. His big, booming voice suits the character so well. It's kinda crazy they were able to get him in only the first season now that I think about it. You also gotta love all the grotesque close-up shots of Ricardio's face. They do an excellent job making this guy look like such a creep. Actually, this whole episode in general looks really good. There's some really cinematic looking shots. The dramatic lighting here is so good. I absolutely love the shot of Ice King stumbling his way back to the Candy Kingdom. It's so pretty. This brief fight scene between Finn, Jake, and Ricardio is done well too. They do a great job playing with Ricardio's size. But what aids the drama here even more is the intense opera music in the background. Seriously, I'm pretty sure this is the only episode of Adventure Time to be scored like this, and it helps make it stand out even more. I don't know what inspired them to do this, but my god does it work. No other Adventure Time episode sounds quite like this one. But going back to Ricardio himself, I'd like to discuss what he represents in relation to the Ice King. It's interesting, both Ice King and Ricardio have the same goal in mind, to marry Princess Bubblegum, or at least a part of her. So what makes Ricardio a bigger threat than the Ice King? I think the fundamental difference between the two is that Ice King shows a level of restraint. Sure, Ice King kidnaps princesses, but he'll never physically harm them, at least not directly. And he's generally able to accept when he's defeated. Whereas Ricardio is an amped up version of the Ice King's lust, going to extreme measures to get what Ice King wants. Ironically enough, you could argue that Ricardio is a version of Ice King without his heart. Ice King wants PB's heart figuratively, whereas Ricardio wants it literally. Finn even calls Ice King a lesser villain in relation to Ricardio. I highly doubt this was intentional, but you can definitely hear a bit of Simon in Ice King's voice when he's relaying what happened to Finn and Jake. I'm sure this was just Tom Kenny trying to make him sound more sick, as I doubt he even had a Simon voice in mind by this time. But it does retroactively make me wonder if Ice King losing his lustful side brought out the Simon within him. I feel like there's a sort of false narrative within the Adventure Time fandom that prior to the Simon Petrikov reveal in Holly Jolly Secrets, that Ice King was just a one-dimensional villain. When in reality, the show was definitely building towards Ice King's sympathetic side since the beginning. He's always been a lonely soul who simply wants to be loved. And this episode is another great example that shows off Ice King's more sympathetic side. Speaking of Ice King, this is something I hadn't really thought about until now, and now I wish I hadn't. But between Ice King kissing Jake's butt in this episode, and Jake and Ice King getting married and When Wedding Bells Thaw, Season 1 is a pretty big season for Jake and Ice King shippers. Do what you will with this information. This is a very solid episode all around. Season 1 definitely has a reputation for being more juvenile than the rest of the show. But this one is surprisingly well plotted. There's a bit more meat to the story than you'd expect. I consider it one of Season 1's stronger episodes as a whole. Please let me know how you feel about Ricardio the Heart Guy in the comments, and have a good one. Squill out.